Hey everybody, welcome back. It's me once again, and I have another special thing that you may have already seen in the previous video if you looked at what was in the pit. Today I'm doing smoked ribs. Now, this is a lot faster than brisket. You still have to take your time with it somewhat. It takes about 3 to 5 hours depending on your cooking temperature. I'm going to be using 250, so 4 or 5 hours is what I'm aiming for. It's a lot faster. You don't have to commit a whole day to it, but it still does take some time. And smoking the ribs instead of baking them or putting them in the crock pot adds some really good flavors to it. So let's go ahead and get into seasoning those. Okay, so I mentioned smoked ribs in the intro, but in specific we are doing pork back ribs. I prefer back ribs to spare ribs. They're a lot more tender and juicier in my opinion. They are smaller, but they're just easier to eat. You don't have to fight with bones and all that much. Now, compared to beef ribs, I don't know. I've never really done beef ribs, but spare ribs versus back ribs, I highly recommend back ribs more. Now, I started off with some lime juice to help break it down and add a nice flavor to it. And I'm going to follow up with Williams Food Co. Rib Tickler. This is a specific type for pork and chicken compared to the sprinkle on barbecue, which is more general purpose. This stuff is sweeter. It's just really good on this stuff. So I'm just going to put some on. Some moisture got in here, unfortunately, so the seasoning is clumping. It's the curse of brown sugar, I guess. Alright, we got our rib tickler on finally. That took a while. So I'm going to add some chili powder. Once again, I find chili powder to be sweet. More sweet than it is spicy. I guess it really depends on which type of chili powder you get. But this is specifically Fiesta. This stuff is pretty sweet to me. To other people, it might come off as spicy, though. Add a liberal amount. And we're going to follow up with some onion powder. Just like in the previous video with the brisket, I would add garlic as well, but I don't have any. I'm going to have to add that later. But yes, I recommend garlic powder too. And someone else's coarse black pepper. Once again, I'm not adding salt. The only salt that's added is what comes in this, if it has any. It probably does. Yeah, it does have salt. Yeah, that's the only salt source I'm adding to this. As I mentioned in the other video, some people will just do salt and pepper. That's fine. I'm not going to do that. I have a problem with salt. And so yeah, you only really have to do the one side. I recommend doing both, but for just the sake of this video and because I'm being lazy, I'm just seasoning the top. But go ahead and do both sides if you really want to. So yeah, go ahead and rub it in. I'm going to cheat. I'm just going to use this thing because I don't like touching the meat. I don't have to. So yeah, just go ahead and rub it and wrap it up 24 hours before you're going to cook it. Just like the brisket. You want to give this seasoning time to sit. So yeah, go ahead and cover it and let it sit. And we'll start at the next part. Alright, here we are the next day. The ribs sat in the fridge overnight and most of the prior day with seasoning applied. Now, we're going to go ahead and put them on the far side of the pit, as you're going to see here in a second. So we're putting it on the far side because the middle's taken and you don't want it right next to the firebox. Now, you don't want to stack them like this, but I didn't really have the space. So, if you have to do this, try to rotate them out. Put the one on top, on the bottom. Just move them around every 30, well, not every 30 minutes because you waste heat, but about every hour. And yeah, as I said, don't put it right next to the firebox. You'll burn the outside long before the middle's done. Now, you can apply juices, like apple juice. Be sure to baste it regularly with some sort of juice to keep it from drying out in the exterior. Like right here, I'm going to put apple juice on with the cup. But it's better if you have a spray bottle. I lost mine. Don't know where the heck it went. So we're just going to do it this way. Now, try to do it over the drip pan, but my drip pan's kind of unreachable at the moment, so we're just going to have to suffer with this. Yeah, I highly recommend using a spray bottle instead. Alright, here we are 3 hours into the cook time. Now, we're going to take these out, and we're going to wrap them in foil. And we're going to do something special. We're going to put juice, well in this case apple juice, in the foil with it. And just get a nice close-up. They have a really nice color and texture. This is the apple juice I'm using, nothing special, it's just what I had on hand. And I'm going to put a cup of apple juice in there. 2 cups would probably also work. Be a bit more careful how you put this in. Put it off to the side. Try not to actually hit the ribs. You don't want to wipe away any seasoning. So just go ahead and close it. And do this for the other two, and just put them back in. And let them sit for another 2 hours. At this point, you don't really have to rotate them anymore. They're good to go. Alright, so the brisket's done. So I was able to move the ribs over a bit so they can cook more. And it's kind of safe with the foil. They're not going to get too hot. But yeah, so you didn't see this, but off camera I measured the temperature. They're about 165 at 5 hours. Now, if you really want tender ribs, I highly recommend cooking them to about 180, 190. They'll become much softer at that cooking temperature. Also, I recommend cooking at 250. I don't know if I mentioned that in this video. I hope I did. But 250 is really good. 275 also works, but if you start cooking at 300 and over, the fat will kind of just dissolve away, and it won't mix well. But anyway, yeah, here you go. Okay, so yeah, that's the smoked ribs. Not nearly as involved as the brisket. You can cook it a lot faster. You don't have to plan nearly as much ahead. It's not as much meat because, you know, bones form what's mostly ribs. So if you're gonna feed a bunch of people, you need more than 2 racks, maybe even 3 or 4. But yeah, normally I cooked them in the middle of the pit, but it was taken by the brisket, so I cooked them all in a stack off to the left. You really don't want to do that unless you absolutely have to, but just rotate them out and you'll be okay. Don't put it next to the firebox because the stay outside will be blackened long before the interior is done. Yeah, it's just kind of all there really is to it. Just be sure to also baste it. It's like spray it with apple juice or whatever juice you want. Or put barbecue sauce on it at the very end. Like the last 30 minutes of cooking, you can baste barbecue sauce on it if you want to. I normally don't do that. I prefer just to go with the juice. Now, yeah, anyway, this has been 2 smoking videos. Hope you enjoyed them. Be sure to like, sub, follow, do all that stuff, you know. Check out our merch. We actually have some new items down in the store. Link is at the bottom of the description. We're probably not going to have much of a description. Been kind of lazy on that recently. Sorry, guys. But yeah, you can catch us here Tuesdays and Fridays. Sometimes other days as well. Not so often. But we're also on Facebook and Instagram. Be sure to come check us out. Anyway, see you next time.